I'm George McGee.
And I'm Kevin Thomas Keel.
And welcome to the premiere of Enigmatic Anomalies.
While we're waiting for Tim Fasano to arrive and to discuss his Bigfoot research, we thought we'd give a little background information to ears and who we are and what we're going to be doing here.
For years we've been interested in the paranormal. Ghosts, UFOs, lake monsters, Bigfoot.
With our love of production, it just seemed natural that to make our own program and highlight the hard work of other people and everything they put into their investigations, and whether it be ghosts or UFOs or anything like that.
And we'll be working with a lot of paranormal investigators, friends and colleagues that we've met along the way. This year, we're joined by Rob Vargas, who brings to our team wilderness expertise and production excellence.
So visit our homepage at earshome.com or subscribe to our YouTube channel.
Also, see us on Facebook.
I think I hear Tim coming now.
Your EA experience begins now. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Enigmatic Anomalies. Tonight, we're going to interview Tim Fasano, Bigfoot researcher. Tim, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. I'm honored to be here.
Well, it's an honor and a privilege to speak with you. You've been hunting this creature in the Green Swamp and in other places for some time now. What inspired you in the beginning to start looking for this thing?
Well, first of all, I just want to say that what you'll find out as you get deeper into the enigmatic world and the paranormal world, some people in Bigfoot would take exception to the word hunting because they think that means you want to go out and kill something. I have no intention of killing anything. So I like to say that I'm researching or searching, but I have no problem using hunting. It's just that other people seem to have an issue with that. But anyway, you asked me what inspired me. Okay, this is going to sound a little unusual, but I think I can make perfect sense of it. I've always believed that there may be a Bigfoot. Okay, I remember seeing stills from the Patterson film when I was about 12 years old, 1968. It was I think it may have been Reader's Digest or maybe Post magazine, one of the major magazines. I saw the stills from it, and it seemed intriguing. My brother didn't think it was real, but I thought it may be real. And other than that, I really had never given it much of a thought. There was an article in a Saga magazine back in 1973. I used to subscribe to that as a teenager because I was interested in things that were strange and weird, and they often had Bigfoot articles in there. And there was one about a particular researcher. We'll talk about him later. I was 17 years old reading an article about a young man named Tom Piscardi who was up in Alaska, who he and a friend of his were using, by today's standards, a primitive form of thermal camera. And they were flying at night just 100 feet off the treetops in a Cessna, trying to get a thermal image of a Bigfoot. And this was 1973. So you can just imagine the type of camera that may have been compared to today's technology. I never had any clue that 40 years later I would one day meet the man and work with him in the field. But anyway, to be more specific about your question, one day I was listening to the radio to the Michael Medved show. Michael Medved is a political commentator who is also a movie reviewer. Now, once a month on the day of the full moon, he does a program called Conspiracy Day, and the floor is open to various topics, but he'll often have a guest on about a particular topic. And this particular day, he had on a woman who does a blog called Oregon Bigfoot. And her name is, I can't remember her name, it just escapes me. It's Autumn something. But anyway, that's not important. It is to her though. But she played a series of recordings that were recorded in the Sierra Nevada mountain range probably about 10 years ago. And what these recordings were of was what she called reciprocal tree knocking. And it piqued my interest. What do you mean reciprocal tree knocking? She said that she believed that Bigfoot communicated with other Bigfoot by knocking a tree limb against another tree. And another Bigfoot downrange would hear that and maybe send another tree knock further down, essentially warning other Bigfoot of the presence of humans. And I was very intrigued by that, because I said, wait a minute, you now have a way where you could actually perform some type of experiment. You could go out in the woods, you could bang on a tree and see if something responded. Well, that piqued my interest. As it turned out, that night I went home and Monster Quest came on, and they had a segment about the New York Bigfoot. And they had a professor from a university in Buffalo who, Autumn Williams is the lady's name. I want to make sure that I get that right, Autumn Williams. They had on a philosophy professor. Now, I majored in philosophy. So my first thought is, what is a philosophy guy talking about Bigfoot for? Well, he talked about archetypes and anthropomorphism. Now, what anthropomorphism is something that's unique to humans and humanity. Humans tend to make physical that which is enigmatic and anomalous to their conscious mind, without stepping on any religious toes. The making of God into the human form of the Christ child is considered an anthropomorphism. The Mormon Church believes that God is of physical flesh, but he's of an exalted form, and that humans through eternal progression can reach that point of deity, but would maintain a glorified physical being. Now, what the philosophy professor pointed out is that that is a psychological security producer that humans do so that they don't feel so alone and so frightened in a terrifying world. And he said all Bigfoot sightings was a archetype in the human mind that was transposing this physical form onto shadows or fleeting glimpses that they catch in the woods, and the next day their mind is convinced that they saw this physical creature. So I was intrigued that on one hand you had someone claiming that through empiricism, which is part of the scientific process, you could discover a Bigfoot, and the other guy saying that it was merely an invention of the human mind, which would be more towards rationalism versus empiricism. And these are the two twin pillars of epistemology. Now, epistemology is the study of knowledge and how humans can acquire knowledge. So I said, this is incredible. I'm going to try to get into this. So the next day I went out to the Green Swamp, actually the Dead River area, with a Louisville slugger. And I went out off the road, not very far, and I banged on a tree, 3 knocks, bang, bang, bang. I realized I did not have to hit it like Derek Jeter as hard as I could, because the vibration just went right through my body. And I didn't get any response. And I banged again, but then I did hear a response, and I recorded it. And it was pointed out to me that, and I found similar recordings on subsequently on other websites, that what actually had responded was perhaps a bobcat that I had scared the shit out of. And that was what the noise was. It was not Bigfoot, it was an animal, but something responded. Anyway, I went home and I looked up on the computer wood knocking Bigfoot, and I immediately got 2 Bigfoot guys that were on YouTube that had done wood knocking experiments. One was TCSJ or Bigfoot, Tim Stover, and another guy went by the name of First Billy Jack. That was Ed. Ed has subsequently dropped out of Bigfootery. The trolls and the negative comments was just ultimately too much for him to deal with. So he vanished. But Tim Stover is still out there. He's actually going to be featured in an upcoming episode of Finding Bigfoot. They're doing a reenactment of his actual sighting. But anyway, I didn't mean to go into a very long spiel there. That's probably not the answer you were expecting, but
that's a fantastic answer, though. I mean, this is the inspiration, and that is something sets a man on a certain course.
Yes.
And it sounds like you definitely went the way to find the thing. As you know, you led us straight to a place where we believe Bigfoot is. And no one, in my experience, has ever been able to nail it like you have. You've really found part of the range.
Heading this way, away from the woods. We're going to see how far we go before they turn back.
Well, in referring to your recent outing that is on the internet, I build on what other people have done, and as far as areas to go into, and I've just gotten people have emailed me and sent me messages, and people that I've spoken with and worked with. But anyway, this is how you learn and grow. If no one's in a vacuum, you're not going to learn much unless you are able to speak with other people. Mm-hmm. But that particular area, I had no clue that you were going to hit the mother lode like you guys did. I mean, I said on my blog, a treasure trove of footprints. I've never seen such a prolific find like that. And I put it up for the rest of the Bigfoot world to take a look at. By the way, this is, for the millions that are watching on television right now, this is a cast of one of the feet that they found out in the Green Swamp, which was one of about, how many would you think, 50, 60 prints leading in a file? I don't know.
I'd have to estimate well over 100 prints.
Over 100 prints, and stretching for several hundred feet apparently.
We'll get an exact length of track the next time we go out.
This cast, and you can see it from the side, and it has clearly defined toes, and the leaves and sticks are still sticking out of it. And this is awesome. I've never had any casting material. So this is actually the first time I've actually held a print in my hand. So this is an historic occasion. This is great.
Well,
anyway,
Tim, how long have you been searching the swamp?
3 years.
3 years in the swamps looking.
3 years.
And it's amazing that you've, I think you've identified probably part of the range of a population. Now, when you go out and collect your evidence, how do you collect your evidence?
Well, I don't collect evidence. I photograph and videotape and record audio. And I don't pick something off the ground if you see a hairball and say, oh, this must be Bigfoot. How do I know what it is? It's some animal left hair. Or some people use the term scat,
Right.
which is poop. And you'll see them with a plastic bag and a baggie, and they're putting the poop into the baggie and they're going to take it. I don't do that.
Right.
I don't do that. I just use my cameras. I have no weapons with me. I'm not armed. I'm completely unarmed out there. Some people say that that's crazy, because it's not just Bigfoot that's out there. There's coyotes and bears and bobcats, and there's the Florida panther, and there's things that could hurt you,
There's
could
hogs.
kill you. There's hogs.
Yeah, the big hogs are probably the most, and bear.
Right. Occasionally I do bring my baseball bat when I'm going to do tree knocking. I guess that would be a weapon.
Yeah.
Bounce right off a hog's head,
Oh yeah.
but that's the extent of it.
Well, what in your view is your mission? I mean, what is your ultimate goal?
My ultimate goal, most people would probably say, who do this, I want to get a clear high definition video, or I want to get a good clear photograph course, you guys being in the production business know that, well, I guess video could be fake too, but with Photoshop, you can make anything look like the real thing. Video is a little harder to fool around with, but with software, that clearly can be done.
Certainly.
But if it was convincing enough to where people would look at it and go, this cannot be faked, this could not be a suit. There is a famous film called the Patterson film, which is considered the holy grail
Yes.
of the Bigfoot world. It was shot in 1967. I mentioned it in the opening, 1967 by Roger Patterson and Bob Gimlin. And there was a movie, a documentary done about several Bigfoot researchers. But during this documentary, they showed that film to a man named Stan Winston. And Stan Winston is Spielberg's chief
Special effects
effects guy.
Yeah.
So they asked him, could you take a look at the Patterson film? He had never heard of it. And I think this was pretty interesting. He sat down at a TV monitor and they played the film. 3 seconds into it, he says, that's a guy in a suit.
Really? Right away.
Right. That's a man in a suit. And this documentary was done by the BBC. And I don't remember whether Winston helped them try to recreate it, but they attempted to recreate it with their big budget and with a special effects suit and with cameras and whatever. They failed miserably. The guy in the suit looked awkward. He looked a good 300, 400 pounds lighter than the Patterson film guy. So I think even though Winston may be correct, the fact that even to this day no one can reproduce that film, duplicate it, means that there's a strong possibility that they may have filmed something that day. So I'm not a big believer in the Patterson film, but I'm leaning more towards it being real than it being fake. Because how do two guys that are basically broke California cowboys pull off such a high-tech type of a hoax that 40 years later, with computer software and digital enhancement, details are being brought out in the film that are amazing, like hair growing out of the face. The fact that the animal had mammary glands. These would be details that two hoaxers who were looking for a quick buck wouldn't fool with. Why would you? We're going to sell some stills to a magazine and make $900.
Yeah.
Screw it. Now the guy put the suit on and walk and we'll do it.
Right.
But anyway, I forgot what the question was.
Well, definitive proof. What?
But beyond that, as I stated earlier about, is this something that's going on in man's mind, or is this really something in the physical terrain? This is what I want to know. For centuries, the Native American Indians in the South have told stories about a large, hairy man that lives in the swamps and the pine forest. And with the continuous amount of sighting reports and with newly discovered evidence like your footprints that you found and the prints that I have found and what others have come across, it tells me that this may be more than just folklore. But a skeptic would say, well, hasn't science classified every animal on Earth? What are you talking about? Well, Michael Crichton, in his preface to Jurassic Park, said that it was only man in his arrogance that believed he could control and understand the forces of nature in its totality. That there are contingency factors that we're completely unaware of. Hence he had the metaphor of the dinosaur experiment that went crazy because man was ignorant to what the potential of that could be. So the point I'm making is that we have only had the scientific tools necessary in the last century to even begin to understand the cosmic forces that have created this universe, created this earth that we live in. And it's not all that you can see. I like to say you have the seen and the unseen, the worldly and the otherworldly, the enigmatic and the anomalous, which science cannot explain. So, philosophy, I said I majored in philosophy. There was a great philosopher, Immanuel Kant, who wrote a book on the critique of pure reason, where he believed that there was a limit to what reason could teach us as far as the things that we would need to know to be human, which would be the metaphysical, or the great questions such as, do we have eternal life? That's a metaphysical question. We could discuss that for 1,000 years and never get closer to an answer or a resolution. And so there are things that transcend experience, that science is the wrong avenue to pursue to acquire the answer. Even though I've got to admit, this little ghost gadget is pretty damn cool, and if it's using science to find ghosts, then I say, well, let's go with it. I would say that if we found a Bigfoot or a skunk ape, that it could validate our very existence, that it could create a new paradigm that would more accurately define just what it means to be human and what makes us so unique. And that's pretty much how I can answer it.
What do we know about it? Can you tell us about the creature in theory, from other people's views and from your own experience? What do you know about it physically? How big a thing is it? How much does it weigh?
To be blunt, we don't know a damn thing about it. There have been people who have attempted to talk about its social structure, and I just stop them dead in their tracks.
Its intelligence level.
We can deduce certain things by what anthropologists call spoor, S-P-O-O-R. Spoor, or the absence of spoor. Spoor would be telltale signs, like a bear's claw marks on a tree tell you that the bear has been there even though you didn't see the bear. So you look for things like that to discern if Bigfoot is around. But I don't believe no one knows anything about this creature, as far as whether it's even a creature. Some people suggest it has intelligence, some people say it is more intelligent than us, and that's how it's been able to evade any human contact, just other than brief sightings. So it's really an open question at this point. I have my opinion on the matter, but that's as far as your question goes, I would just say that everything's on the table as far as what it could possibly be. We do know that it may have a foot, and a pretty big one. But anyway, that's...
Well, if such a thing lives in the woods, then do you believe that there must be a breeding population? If so, how big a population is out there?
Well, to have a healthy breeding population, that's out of my realm of expertise, I would imagine at least several thousand. Otherwise, you would end up with inbreds and mutants, and maybe something that doesn't have 5 toes. So there would have to be a significant breeding population, but probably not in the hundreds of thousands. Throughout North America, possibly. I've heard this on other videos and TV shows, maybe in the tens of thousands perhaps, or maybe just a few thousand, but enough that you would have good genetics going on, so you don't have mutants. There have been people that have found footprints that had 3 toes, but I don't think they were finding Bigfoot.
So.
Well, the fellow in South Florida, Sheely, has found the 3 toes, but alligators, he was pointing out to me that alligators have 3 toes. So maybe he just found an alligator print but didn't know it, so right. I don't know.
Exactly. Yeah. I've misidentified prints myself. So it's easy to misidentify a print.
Sure it is. But not this one. That's an upright hominid.
It's a hominid.
Yeah.
And from what we know, we can say that it's humanoid, but that's all we can really say. Now, In your investigations, in your expeditions, have you had a good naked eye, clear sighting?
The short answer is no. I have, however, seen movement and moved towards it and got on my video camera a will-o'-the-wisp movement. And that's just really frustrating when you're a researcher, that you think you got that close to something and you had your camera and you just didn't get it. The only thing I can relate it to is there's a guy that I work with who's a hunter. And he said in 20 years of hunting, the only time he's ever seen a wild turkey was when he did not have the shotgun in his hands. Because they'll just appear, prance and go. And if you don't, the same thing with Bigfoot. If you don't have that camera and you don't have it poised, if you're on wide angle and it's far away, or you got it on zoom and he runs 2 feet in front of you, you don't get the image. Yeah. So that's why I'm not really a believer in, I really believe that what may photograph this is using high-tech trail cams. The trail cams that they make now, or the camera traps, some people call them, the battery life on them can be up to 6 months. And if you position them in a good spot, you can let that puppy ride for 6 months before you go back to get it. And that may be the only way I can think of that you will get a clear image of a skunk ape if they're out there.
Yeah.
You know, there's a researcher in Sumatra who uses camera traps almost exclusively now. His only going out into the field to look for their version of the Bigfoot, which is called Orang Pentak, which is actually a small creature supposedly. He doesn't go around looking for it. He goes out, sets his traps and leaves and comes back. But he's had some success. Like there have been several species that were considered extinct, such as the Sumatra jackrabbit that he photographed that scientists said went extinct in 1916. Well, in 2005, he got a photograph of one of them, so the things must still be out there.
Like the coelacanth.
Or the coelacanth that they dragged out of the ocean in 1936. Scientists said it had been extinct for several million years. Well, what was it doing in the fisherman's boat in 1936? So that's what I mean when I said only man in his arrogance thinks that he has total knowledge of everything.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, down to the nuts and bolts of what you do. How deep into the green swamp have you traveled?
I've hiked in on the in the early days when I did this. I got deep into the east track, which is the hunter's track. I didn't even know enough then to know that that's where hunters were at until I started coming across their camps. And you could hear gunfire in the distance. And even though I spent all day going out and all day getting back to the car till dark, that would probably be as far as I've ever gotten into the swamp. But it would not be the area that a researcher should go into where there's hunters, because the theory is that where there's hunters, there's no Bigfoot. They leave that area. You want to go into areas that are more of a sanctuary from hunters, where you'll find more wildlife, because even all the wildlife gets the hell out of there. The deer get out of there when you're out, the hunters are out banging.
Exactly.
Yeah, so you want to go into areas where hunting is prohibited. And that's where you need to be.
Well, tell me about, you've told me in the past there's sometimes you've been out in these swamps and had some pretty scary encounters where you know something was watching you. Can you tell us about that?
One, and I tacked it on to the end of a video recently, was when something was charging me through the brush, coming right at me, and you can clearly hear on the tape coming right at me. I thought I was going to get at any given second a King Kong type of thing where it tears the trees apart and standing there staring at me. Well, it diverted at the last second and didn't get me. I also had a similar incident happen where the charging occurred and I started running. and it was pursuing me. And I don't know what it was. It could have been a pig, could have been a deer. My experience with deers is that they don't pursue you, they just run from you. Have you ever come across a deer?
Yes.
They may freeze and look at you for a second, and then ping, they're gone.
Yes.
Yeah, so I don't think it was a deer. Only because I don't think it'd be, unless it didn't know you were there and it was bouncing around towards you.
A deer can accidentally run towards you.
Right, possible.
That's it.
But I never got a visual one, and now I put the videos up, and I would get people who would analyze them and send me stills, send me video stills where they'd circled in red things that they said were Bigfoot or skunk apes in the video. I don't think so. I was there, I didn't see it, and they were circling what is commonly referred to as a blob squatch. That's a term in Bigfooting. There's a blob in the bushes, and people say, oh, that's a Bigfoot. Some of these blob squatches look like they have heads, shoulders, and arms, but it's just light and shadow.
Right.
That's all it is.
Can easily be
something
else.
You could go, I did a video where I proved that. I zoomed in this wooded area where you could see this Bigfoot standing there. It looked just like a Bigfoot. I said, there he is, there he is. You can see him right there. Right there. You can see him moving. This is what I'm saying. And then I turned around to show everybody that I was at the Kmart parking lot aiming the camera at a little wooded area that was there. But the people who were seeing it were convinced they were seeing a Bigfoot until I actually showed them we're at Kmart.
Yeah.
There's no Bigfoot here. You see Bigfoot at Walmart.
My uncle, who tells a story of when they were children, they'd walk sometimes at night past the cemetery.
Right.
And they always said that there was some scary old boogeyman out in the cemetery. And my uncle one day challenged this by walking up to the boogeyman and discovering it was nothing but a tree. In the night, in the dark, this tree looked like a person.
Sure. And to children, it's terrifying.
It had the kids terrified, and it was nothing. Well, a lot of times I think we can be fooled by things out in the woods and not know what's really happening out there. Once I was in the woods in the camping alone, and I heard steps that sounded like something stepping in dry leaves, and it took steps after step, and I thought something's out there walking. Well, I've encountered things walking in the woods before that were big and heavy. This thing sounded like a little lighter thing out there walking. I got a flashlight and I went to investigate what it was and found a great big bullfrog hopping through the leaves. It can easily sound like something that it's not.
Oh, yeah, and we have armadillos that are an invasive species here in Florida. And those little things, all they're doing is that they're rooting around. But they make a hell of a lot of noise. I've walked by and I've heard and I'm convinced there is some huge animal out here.
Yes.
And then oh my God, it's just a little freaking armadillo.
On our very first expedition to the Green Swamp,
right.
Kevin and myself went out and camped overnight in a very remote area along the Withlacoochee. The only animal we heard all night was one of those making a lot of noise.
Yeah?
They're noisy as can be.
Well, without revealing, one thing I learned, you don't ever want to tell anybody your location. You can be specific, I mean, you can be vague, like we were in Central Florida, or we were in the Green Swamp, but not really give your exact location. There's solid reasons for that. One is because the area could become compromised with interlopers going in there.
Certainly.
Yeah, or someone could go in there and set up some kind of a hoax. I'm not so worried about somebody going into hoaxing as I am about going in there thinking I've got the area to myself and there's 35 people out there with pickup trucks and kegs of beer and they're going to make a big party all night, which equals noise. And my experience is when there's noise, there's nothing going on. Even the animals run away.
Well, you know, in the area we found our tracks is a popular place to camp, and only a few days before we got there, there was a number of Boy Scouts camping in the area.
Yes, you point that out on your website.
So, you know, it's already a compromised area in that sense.
Well, this is not a 12-year-old boy's footprint. I can tell you that for the camera, folks. You know.
out in those swamps, you don't want to go barefoot, and I can't imagine anyone in their right mind going barefoot.
No, but I also go by the theory that if I can find my way out to somewhere and be standing on this spot, someone else could have.
Oh yeah.
So, but I was at a campsite that you guys had some photographs of, that you walked out. You remember you hiked 3 miles out and came back? Okay, I had a 3-night expedition there. I call it expedition. First night I was alone, and that was scary. You asked about, was I ever scared? Right at sunset, across the river, the little river there, where the tree made the natural bridge, do you remember that?
Yes.
Okay, and was that you sitting on it? Or
No, it's actually a photo of our friend Kevin sitting on that tree.
That was Kevin sitting on the tree. Okay.
Actually, yes.
It was Kevin, all right. Right there, as the sun was setting, I could hear movement on the other side and tree limbs breaking. Something large was moving through, and it persisted for a while. The first night, I took some video going out. I would stop at a few places on the way out. By the time I got out to camp, the battery died in my camera. And I said, well, no problem. I've got an inverter for the cigarette lighter. Let me grab my cord. Open up the glove box, reach in where my cord's supposed to be, and it's not there. And it dawns on me, it's in one of my drawers at home. Oh my God, I can't believe this. But I had a Nikon digital SLR. I said, well, I'm gonna have to take photos, so maybe I'll listen more and hear more. And I heard the movement, the twigs breaking, and then later that night I heard one of the best howls I've ever heard coming from way deep in the woods, and it was like a burst of 5. It was roo, 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 roo. I'm getting the hell out of here. I was by myself.
Yeah.
I got in the car and I left, actually. I was not going to camp out. I admit this to the world. I was too scared to tent camp that night. The reason was I was by myself. And I plead guilty to being a chicken, but I'm unarmed. And if you're laying there asleep on the ground in a little flimsy tent, you're vulnerable. And I don't know what the hell's going to walk up on me. And it may be some crazy guys who decided to go hunting in the middle of the night, who are on drugs or boozed up.
The most dangerous animal.
It's the most dangerous animal, man. So I got out of there. It convinced me that it would be really better to go with about 3 or 4 guys who have the same research goal in mind.
Oh yeah.
Because one thing they'll do, even though you got 3 or 4 guys together, is remain quiet.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The second night, these college students moved in, and they were loud, and they playing the guitar around the campfire. So I shift my location to another area to do night expedition. There were some trails I had found that I went in there. I was a good 1.5 miles away from the campers, so I didn't have to listen to them. And finished doing night ops. I tried howling, and I never did hear that animal again. I never did hear it again. I'm sure it's out there, and the key is just being very quiet. I'm convinced it's the noise that campers make that keep the animals away. But anyway, that's all I got to say about that.
Okay.
All right.
Well, there's obviously something out there. Now, this, really, do you think it's a living thing? Do you think it, I mean, you were saying before that it could be a trick of the mind.
Could be a trick of the mind.
You know.
But the mind doesn't leave.
It doesn't leave footprints.
I know, this is what gets me.
Yeah.
Because it's things like that when I'm about ready to just say, forget this is nonsense. I have found prints. I found, you could look this up on YouTube. I did a video 3 years ago called Hopewell. You can look up Skunk Ape footprints Hopewell. And there was this tributary that went out to this little creek off of a horse trail. And when I was coming back from the tributary, I found this huge print. And I remember the shape of it. I got photographs of it. I got video of it. And on one of your videos that you took out in the swamp, when I think Kevin calls you over.
Oh man, you gotta see this print.
Granted, it's not a big, long print, but look how round his toes are. It's straight in. Look how deep and how wide this heel is.
And you come up, and as you approach and that print becomes visible, I stood up even though I was home alone, and I pointed at the computer and I said, that's the same damn print. A screenshot of that compared to a screenshot of the one I took 3 years ago about 40 miles south. It's the same animal that left that print. And that's what keeps me going, is when you find things like that, then that was a moment where I just said, I know now that this thing has got to be real.
Well, just less than 48 hours ago, I looked at your video online of that.
Oh, you did?
I looked it up and I looked at it. I noticed the shape of that foot's exactly the same shape as this foot.
Yeah.
I mean, it's either the individual or one of his close relatives.
Well, yeah, or it's the population have similar, but I've also found thin, narrow footprints. I have found, wide, fat ones.
There are variations.
I have found some that were worn. They've been there a while because a small animal had done its business in the print. So it had been there a while, and it was kind of worn, but it was leading down to a creek bed. And one of my critics, I have many, said that I had just simply taken my shoe off and stepped it in the ground. Well, if I'm using my foot to fake prints, how come I have a different variety of sizes?
Yeah.
My foot doesn't change size.
Right.
Plus, I've got for my size, I have a small foot, like a goat's foot or something. I wear a size 9 shoe, and that's it. So there's no way I could replicate some mammoth size of shoe print, a footprint.
Well, if there are living creatures in the woods, why do you suppose? And I know there are logical answers for this, but I'd like to hear it from you. Why do you suppose we find no dead bodies of these creatures?
Oh, well, that's like we don't find dead bodies of other animals like bears and things. In 3 years, I've only found one body, which was of a coyote that may have passed away of natural causes. The reason I say that is because its teeth were very worn. The molars, do coyotes have molars? Very worn. It was probably an older dog that had passed, and he was in medium to advanced state of decomposition, so maybe he'd been there less than a week, maybe 5-6 days. Terrible smell. You could barely get near it to photograph it. But that's sort of a rare find to come across something laying there dead, because they'll decompose and animals will eat them and scatter the bones, and so that's an easy question. The absence of a body lying dead in the woods cannot be used as proof that the animal does not exist, because I've never found even squirrel or raccoon bodies, and they're all over the place out there. So
Yes.
yeah,
Yes. Well, the old saying, absence of evidence is not evidence.
it's not evidence, right?
Well, tell me this. If there's something out there, do you think it'll ever be identified, and will we ever see it in the zoo, or will we ever recognize it as an aborigine? Will it ever be proven and discovered, do you think? What's your feelings? Do you think we'll ever get proof?
I would have to lean towards, you mean like a body in a zoological department?
Right.
I don't think so. The animal, through evolutionary processes, is able to evade us and evade capture for whatever reason. That's what's in its genetics, and I just don't think that we're going to find him or it. And I would hope that we do. You mentioned zoo. I hope I'm wrong on that, but because of its adaptation to nature to evade humans, putting it in a zoo would be the worst form of torture. It would be like solitary confinement to a human being. The Geneva Convention would say that that was torture. So an animal that is not gregarious, obviously, not like other animals, like squirrels and seagulls, for example. That's a bird you can get close to. It almost doesn't even care. So you could put a squirrel or a seagull in a zoo, and as long as you're feeding the thing, it doesn't care. Couldn't care less. But something like this has got a real reason to not be around humans. So putting it around us would be a bad idea for the animal.
Well, wouldn't you feel that any primate would fall into that same category, like a gorilla?
No, they seem to thrive and do very well in captivity. Chimpanzees at the Lowry Park Zoo, they seem very happy. They're around other chimpanzees. They're well fed. That seems to be just a primary consideration for them. And they also get something they never get in the wild, which is veterinarian care. So as long as they're fed and they're around other chimpanzees, they don't even know they're in captivity.
And a Sasquatch wouldn't go for that.
Well, we were able to capture gorillas and chimpanzees and able to walk up on them and see them in the jungle. There's some reason why we can't walk up on this thing.
Yes, it is a different kind.
It's a different kind of animal. So we can't even spot it from a distance. So there's a reason why it does that.
Well, then would you agree that it would have to be treated differently than an animal? And what I'm saying is, would you treat it more like a man?
No, because I don't think it is a man. As we were saying before the show tonight, I think it lives completely off of instinct. I said evolutionary processes. This may have occurred at the ape-man split that happened 1 million years ago. I don't know when, but primitive man, primitive human, at some early stage invented tools, became a tool maker, primarily to make arrowheads, to put on a spear to hunt fleet-footed mammals that it wanted to eat, like elk, for example. A human cannot run down an elk, but it can throw a spear, hit it and kill it, and then drag it off to the camp and eat it. So what we have with Bigfoot and with Skunk Ape is we have the absence of tool making. Primitive man invented fire. There's no evidence that a Bigfoot has ever had fire. And primitive man invented art. Primitive cave drawings in France, for example, the first cave drawings that were found. So we know humans express themselves by art, and humans are resourceful to decide that I would rather eat my meat cooked over a fire than eat it raw. Tastes better. Okay. These are things that humans have done. There's no evidence to suggest that a Bigfoot has ever done anything like that. They've never even found a vacated encampment, like you would see their fire, the bones they ate, and maybe their little shelters that they built. There's nothing like that. It's as if the animal just sleeps on the ground like every other animal in the woods does. So I don't believe they have intelligence. I really don't. Not as we would define intelligence. And that's what I was saying earlier, that could define who we are and validate our existence by really knowing that there's something special about humans. There's something unique about humans. And maybe we got our intelligence from God. I don't know. That's beyond my pay grade. But it could really show us that there's something very unique and special.
Well, to sort of wrap it up, what if a person out there in our audience finds evidence or has a close encounter? What should they do? Well, I mean, I consider you to be a real expert.
Stay still.
Yeah.
And if you have a camera, get an image of it. there is nothing to indicate that these animals have ever attacked or approached people. They tend to just go away from you as quickly as they can. It'd be like, what do you do when you see a deer? Just freeze, take a look at it. They'll stare at it. I've had them stare at me for over a minute.
Yeah.
And then boom, 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 they're gone. So if you were to encounter one, don't be afraid, because it's not going to hurt you. There's nothing to suggest that they've ever hurt anybody. There are some tales about throwing boulders at people or rocks. I think maybe that's an attempt by them to scare you away. But if you see one, grab your camera and don't be in fear of your life. There's other animals out there you would want to be more afraid of.
Oh yeah.
You
Rattlesnakes are very dangerous.
Or a black bear could
Yeah.
potentially do some damage. I don't think a skunk ape would. Now you probably would be scared. If I actually saw one and I'm looking eye to eye with it, my heart's going to be pounding a million beats a minute.
Yeah.
But that would be my suggestion.
Well, now there is one question that has nothing to do with Bigfoot that I think maybe the folks at home would love to hear from you. And that is, what are your views on ghosts and the occult? I'm
Completely open. The occult would mean that you would believe in demons and that kind of stuff. I don't know if I'm going to go there, but I do believe that there's energy, and it would not be impossible in my mind for there to be energy left behind from a departed person. I think it's pretty fascinating that that device has picked up the presence of at least 20 specific words emanated from some energy field or source in this building that is supposed to be haunted. So
It's another enigma for us.
that's a very enigma.
Yeah.
But I did want to mention DNA. Okay.
Yes.
There is currently a DNA study going on. It's commonly referred to as the Erickson Project. There's a wealthy businessman out of Canada named Adrian Erickson, and he has funded a DNA study through a scientific laboratory in Texas for the purpose of proving scientifically that Bigfoot exists. Now, they have collected samples from researchers throughout the country. What the researchers have done is, if they found blood on a tree bark, or they found hair, or they found poop, or things of that nature. One person found a thumbnail. They put it in the baggie, seal it up, and they mail it into the laboratory. And they've received about, to date, 120 samples. Now, there's some things about this that I find a little unusual. The samples have only been studied by one scientist and her assistant. And they leaked, or someone leaked recently, that the mitochondrial DNA, you have two types of DNA. You have mitochondrial DNA and nuclear DNA. Mitochondrial DNA is the DNA of your ancestral mother, going way, way back, maybe thousands of years. Okay, they claim that the mitochondrial DNA on all the samples is human, but the nuclear DNA is somewhere between Neanderthal and modern man. Now, I don't believe a word of that, not one word, because I question how the samples were gathered. Didn't O.J. Simpson get off of a murder rap because they pointed out that the samples had been poorly gathered because it could compromise the DNA strand. So these were not gathered in a scientific manner. And getting to the human factor, if the mitochondrial DNA of these samples is human, then why don't we have tool making? Why don't we have fire? Why don't we have language? Why don't we have art? Why don't we have the very things that define what a human is? We've never found any burial sites. Primitive man had an understanding of the afterlife.
Yes.
And they began burying their dead. None of this seems to happen with Bigfoot. So you're going to tell me that there's a human aspect to something that's not human. I don't believe a word of it. I'm not calling them hoaxers, but I believe that they've gone a little too far with something they didn't think was going to go that far, and they don't know how to get out of it. That's the nicest way I can put it, because I think they'd want to get out of it at this point. There's talk of a peer-reviewed paper being printed in a scientific journal. I don't believe at this stage that a scientific journal is going to accept a paper proving the existence of a Bigfoot without a type A specimen,
Right.
which is a body. See, the reason we can talk about the giant octopus or about the coelacanth is because we found the damn things.
And maybe we'll find this thing too.
Maybe we'll find Bigfoot. We can only hope.
Thank you, Tim.
Well, thank you.
We'll talk again soon. Visit Tim Fasano's website, bigfootafterdark.com.